Hello, people. I'm here today with a very, very special guest, Bill Cutolo Jr., and as you know, Wild Bill's son. And we're going to be discussing some stuff. And first of all, Bill, I'd like to thank you for you had to make a choice for who you were going to give the interview to, and you chose us, and it's greatly appreciated.
No thanks necessary, guys. None at all.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And you're very controversial, and I'm going to ask you a question. We did a show on you. We came out hard on you on a recent show,
Yeah.
and you decided that you were going to come here anyway. And
Yeah.
kudos for you for doing that. And Danny has a reputation that he's putting at risk. So we're going to all talk about that. But what made you decide to do this show?
To be honest with you guys, I really didn't pay much attention to podcasts. Honestly, I was in the yard a few weeks ago, and someone had let me know that you guys had put out a show, and I didn't know who you were, Lee or Danny, at that point. Maybe Danny, I think I did, maybe from Facebook. So anyway, I turned it on, and I was being ripped to shreds. And you guys did hit on a lot of key things. I mean, as far as me wearing pink, I do like that color. I think it looks good on me. And then Danny had mentioned one other thing that I'm sure we'll get into it, but saying that my dad was tough on his crew, and Danny was on point. So, seeing some of these other podcasts that's out there, and this no slight to anybody, because I ain't gonna take a shit on anybody, whether it be Jimmy, whether it be FBS. There's another joker out there, MR or something, whatever it is.
Yeah, now you made the choice of going to FBS, a better choice going to FBS and Jimmy. MRE, forget it.
Yeah. Then there was another gentleman, Jeff, I believe. So anyway, Danny and I have a little bit of history when it comes to the Colombo family. So I said, who better to do a podcast with is you guys, who I do appreciate what you guys do, and you guys put out a good product. And look, I'm not selling anything. I'm not trying to be something I'm not. But I do get a lot of questions, whether it be on Instagram or Facebook and stuff like that. So, like Danny says, there are a lot of things that gets thrown around in the midst of these podcasts, and you don't have control over it. So I figured, again, who better to sit down with than you two guys?
Much appreciated.
And I appreciate you guys too, especially you, Danny.
Thank you.
Slightly.
And people say, okay, here's Bill Cutolo, another rat. He wore a wire. He sent guys to prison. Tell us what your feelings is about that when you hear that in general.
Well, listen, it is what it is. I can't split hairs. I cooperated. My name pops up in a 302. Guess what? You're a rat. I acted out of anger from day one. That very night, I was very angry. But the thing is that particular night, May 26th of 99, my dad didn't show up to the club. It was as if like the guy never existed. And it kind of shook me. And my father used to tell me, Willie, never let anybody see what you're thinking. And that night was very, very difficult. I had to sit around and act as if like he was just running late. I tried to sit down to eat, but I couldn't. I tried to play cards. I couldn't keep my head focused. So a couple of days went by. I was at my dad's house in Staten Island, tending to my mother, and I just happened to be out watering his plants that morning, and I see a car come rolling up. And mind you, I had a pistol in my robe that morning. And I'm looking, and my dad's house, it was only like one way down, and then you had to make a U-turn to leave. So I spot the car, and it was nothing that I recognized besides being a DT car. So as they make the U-turn to come back around, I could see like a badge being flashed out the window. So I'm like, okay, here we go. So it was a detective of the NYPD, along with an FBI agent. They said hello to me. They knew who I was. This one particular detective has locked me up a few times. So we had a little bit of a rapport. And their question, as usual, as you guys see in the movies, and I'm sure Danny, stories. They say things to you like, "Hey, sorry about your dad." And I looked at them, and I was just like, "What do you mean you're sorry? Do you know something I don't know?" And the detective turns around and tells me, he goes, "Well, I could see that you got a pistol in your robe." I'm like, "Yeah, I do." They didn't take it off me. They didn't look to lock me up. The only thing they said to me was, if anything happens to anybody from here on out, we're coming directly to you. And I was a little arrogant.
Let me ask you a question, Bill. That night when you're sitting in the club, and when did you start realizing that you started thinking the worst, that your dad was taken out?
Probably about an hour after he didn't show. And I started making my rounds around the neighborhood, Lee, you're familiar with Scatoros. I heard you mention on one of your shows.
Yes.
And my father grew up in that apartment building right behind Scatoros.
He had a place right across the street from Scatoros.
Yeah. So I went to Secrets. That was a bar that we had across the street. I went over there. They didn't see him. I spoke to the kids that was setting up in the club that night, because I was beeping him prior to getting to the club that night, because we were supposed to meet for haircuts and manicure and stuff like that. And guys from other crews, sometimes they knew when my dad was going to be around this place called Bruno's, where we used to go. And a lot of guys used to stop in just to bend my dad's ear for a minute or two, rather than come up to the social club, which was always on the surveillance. So I started paging him from this hair place. 15 minutes goes by, he's not getting back to me. About a half hour goes by, he's not getting back to me. Now I'm starting to beep him with a 911 with my code 08. Now, usually in the past, it was very rare if I ever beeped him a 911. So when he didn't get back to me with the 911 with my code, I'm like, okay, something's amiss here. Something's wrong. And that's when I jetted up to the club, and his truck was parked in the parking lot. So when I had gotten to the club, I was like, I had like a little bit of a sigh of relief. I'm like, oh, all right, he's got to be around. And when I started talking to the kids that used to clean up and take care of the club for us, they're like, no, Billy, when we got here, his truck was here, but, we didn't see your dad. So that's when I started scouring 11th Avenue. I probably went into every place that I possibly could in succession. And everybody had told me the same thing. They didn't see him. So
now, do you want to ask him and Danny anything about that night and that time that happened?
No. I'm aware of that.
Okay. So pretty much the guys that they eventually found out that did this, I'm just going to put up some pictures and just tell me what you're feeling.
Well, wait, let me just stop. It's alleged. It's still alleged. Okay.
Okay.
It's still alleged.
Okay. I'm just going to put up their pictures and tell me if you knew him at that point, and were you surprised that they were involved in it? First, we'll start right here, and you know who that is. That's Dino Saraceno.
Piece of shit. Had no clue that he was involved.
And it turned out it was his house, and he actually had a room made to execute people in. And it wasn't, he did this more than once. And Now he's doing 50 years, I believe, right?
He's safer where he is.
And this guy right here,
Another bum.
and where's he right now?
He gets out in 2024, Gioli.
Okay. And then we got Dino Calabro, right?
That's Colorado.
Nope, maybe not. Let me take that down. Okay.
That's Joey Caves. That's
Joey Caves,
Campitello.
yes. Now he was involved in it too, right?
Yeah, supposedly he dug the hole. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, it's not even supposed. He admitted to digging the hole. Yeah.
Now, Dino Calabro is out, right? He basically testified. He's the one that got everything going. Was it him that eventually his information is what led to the bodies?
Yes, I believe it was Joey Campitello that might have started talking first. I don't know, Danny. Maybe you may know, but
Yeah, Joey apparently was the one that opened the door, and then everything else fell into succession. But it was my understanding too that Calabro was into a lot of money for your dad. You know, your dad loaned him a lot of money, so I think he was the loose link in the process of your father, you know, getting what he got. But you know, your dad was a good man, and he didn't deserve to die the way he died.
thank you.
And you know, irregardless of how people feel, you know, he was definitely a man's man without question.
Thank you, Danny.
And
Let me say this. I'm sorry.
no problem.
Calabro. My old man knew or found out, okay, that Calabro had something to do with that cop, Doles,
Right.
and he was marked. Calabro was marked. So if Calabro decided to act on his own, let's just say maybe,
Right.
that would be a very good reason to be on the offense rather than the defense, right? Okay.
So do you think that Alley Boy ordered it?
That's alleged.
You know,
That's not even, you know,
yeah,
you know, I don't think
yeah.
that's.
Maybe
It's
you don't want
alleged.
to discuss
It's
it right
alleged.
now because he is in prison right now and he is.
Well, look, this is how I see it, okay? I didn't find out anything about where my dad was, and ironic enough, it was '08, okay? And I told you that was the code, my code from my father. '08, I believe it was. And when I found out, when Campitello said he dug the hole, and he told me himself that he had no idea the hole that he was digging had to do with Wild Bill. Now, I'm taking him at his word. But as far as Calabro and Gioli, Gioli giving the order in a church, again, alleged, I feel that Calabro had more than enough of a reason to want to see my father dead. So, yeah, everybody wants to say it was Ali, it was this guy, that guy. Look, it came out who pulled the trigger, who dug the hole, supposedly who gave the order. So as far as I'm concerned, I feel, this is just me, that maybe I got something wrong. You know, had I acted very rashly, you know, Danny, Lee, in that moment, I make other kids orphans. And then I find out in 2008 that, well, you got it wrong. You know?
And now when the information came out, was there a relief that you got the body?
Somewhat, you know, I thought, I honestly thought that I was going to feel somewhat better. But that was a fallacy because I can't say that I felt better. I felt like I relived the night all over again. And I found myself thinking the way I was thinking back then in 1999. And that's a very scary place for me to be. And I've worked very hard on myself, and I still work very hard on myself to not be that person anymore, you know? You're raised to be a certain way, especially like Danny knows. My dad cast a very big shadow, and it was very hard to live up to that. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. Um, but I think I did a decent job of it. You know, I had some hiccups along the way, but but no, I can't say there was very much relief once I found out.
And
To be honest with you,
these guys that were involved in the killing,
yeah,
did any of them come up to you during that time? And did you see any of these guys during that time?
no, no, not Gioli, not Calabro, not definitely not Saraceno. None of those guys ever came around our club, especially after the whole Dole's murder. Um, I could tell you a story.
Sure.
We were at a wedding, um, a wise guy's wedding, a captain's wedding. It was out in, I believe it was Long Island, and Saraceno, Calabro, they were part of this guy's crew, and it was this guy's daughter's wedding, and we were there with about, I don't know, 10, 12 guys, and my father cornered this guy. Matter of fact, during the war, they traded shots with each other. And this guy saw the fear of God when my father fucking cornered him. We were all standing there for it too. And he swore up, and my father was grilling him over the cop's murder. Because, Danny, you know this. We don't touch law enforcement. We don't
Right.
touch women and children, and we definitely
Right.
don't touch law enforcement. So he was being grilled over this, and he swore up and down it had nothing to do with him. And I think my father bought it at the time. So this gentleman seemed to be okay. But as far as Calabro and Saraceno, those guys were marked for sure, by my dad.
So there were other guys in the streets that really wanted to get at him too, basically.
Yeah.
So will you say they were in hiding or just staying out of the way?
Just trying to stay out of the way. I mean, to try to say they were hiding, I don't know if they were hiding. No. But just trying to stay out of my dad's scope, you know.
Do you think your dad let his guard down that night?
For sure, because my father and I, we had some pretty deep conversations, especially when he came home from jail. My dad had told me, literally, because I had said to him, I believe Allie might have come by the club and just to say hello. And I remember seeing my dad on a Sunday, because Saturday, it was a Saturday afternoon. I think I saw Allie. On the following day was Sunday. I used to go spend Sundays with my dad. And I had said to him, I said, look, I need to talk to you about something. And my dad used to have a saying with me, and I've said it before. My dad used to ask me, which hat am I wearing? You know, am I wearing the pop hat or the skipper hat? And I said the skipper hat for this particular conversation. And he's like, come on. He goes, we'll go downstairs. We'll shoot some pool. We'll grab a cigar. So my question to him was, so help me understand, Pop. So everything that went on during the war, all the guys that wound up dead, it's all forgotten about. Yeah, Willie, it's done. I'm like, so everything's good between you and the kid. That's how my dad used to refer to Allie. And my dad said, yes, everything is good between him and I. And my dad pointed over to a popcorn machine maker, like one of them old timey ones. And he's like, the kid sent it over as a gift. I says, all right. And I accepted what my dad had told me, because that's how it was. You know, he gave us our marching orders, and we just followed, you know. So as far as my dad was concerned, he felt that everything was done, forgotten about. He let me know about the other wars, you know, from years prior, from the days of Gallo and Colombo, and Carmine supposedly being involved. So yeah, I guess he did let his guard down, but I don't know if his guard had to be let down for Allie, if that makes sense.
Now, before I get in, Danny getting into questions, and thank you for sharing that about your dad. I mean, that's some pretty deep stuff, and that's the stuff people want to hear. And I just want to now you see what's going on with this mob. What do you think about guys like, say, Convict Inc. that come out and they kind of belittle the Persicos, let's say, and you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. First of all, I'd hate to give any notoriety to that guy, any, because he seems fucking clueless. Just look at him. That's A. B, you're talking about making love to a fucking beer can.
Yep.
So why he would turn around and say something so personal? It's a hygienic thing. Okay. That's not something that you would use on a show. Like, I didn't see the reason why. Like, are you trying to say he was a punk? Are you trying to say he was just dirty? You know, what are you trying to say? You know,
Right.
that man is a legend. You know, he was one of the 5 that took 100-year sentence, and he
Yep.
did it with a smile. So
And Danny sent me a picture of him standing in prison in 2015. Was that picture 15 or 17?
Yeah, it was in Lewisburg. Yeah.
And he had a bunch of
15.
guys around him. He didn't look like nobody that was scared of anybody.
no, and from what I understand, he was well liked in the can. My dad used to tell me that he used to like flowers or roses or something to that effect. That he enjoyed doing that stuff, behind the wall. Nah, Carmine was a solid stand-up dude. I actually, I tried. He was trying to get a compassionate release just before he passed, and I remember reaching out to his attorney at the time, and I just said, "Look, if there's anything that I can do, maybe it be a letter or anything." I'm like, please don't hesitate to ask. I'd be more than happy and more than willing to do so. But Carmine, the man that he was, he said, thank you, but I respectfully have to decline.
And see, this is one thing
I
that people
appreciate
don't
that.
understand. When this guy's coming out and he's telling prison stories, but he admits to being an addict in prison for decades.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things he admits. And now he comes forward and we're supposed to believe him about this. We're supposed to believe him about Jimmy Calandra. Everybody's supposed to believe him. And unfortunately,
Well, he's doing that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
no
off.
problem. No.
But he's doing that because he's trying to win people over. Say, like, hey, look, I'm going to say I'm a drug addict or a drunk, for what? So that people are going to believe the other shit that you're saying because
Right.
you're trying to say something personal about yourself? Nah, I ain't buying that bullshit.
Unfortunately, in this genre, we have a lot of people that are looking for, they know nothing about the life, but so they're more able to believe things like that. And
True.
they don't understand that when you're in prison, you don't meet all these guys. It's not like you're on the floor with all the celebrities.
Yeah.
We're going to be doing a show tomorrow with Mad Dog Sullivan's his best friend.
Oh, that should be a good show.
With pictures with Sullivan and stuff. But see, he's coming and showing evidence. Not just saying things.
That's some history right there.
We don't want him coming on saying, I knew Sullivan. Danny knew Sullivan in prison. So, just bring
Hey,
facts.
look, if I was in the can and Danny was in there, me and Danny would be good friends. I'm sure of it.
Yep.
Okay. Now we're going to get to the fun part. Danny has some questions he wants to, and I know you've been getting ready for this. Danny has some questions that he's going to ask you. And they're questions, and I don't even know what he's going to ask you. This is a Danny thing. So,
It's okay.
Well,
now I'm going to
listen.
step back, and Danny's going to take the interview over.
Okay.
Listen, I'm glad you came on the show for whatever reason. You know my position as far as people that inform but I give you props for coming here and reaching out. I mean, that shows your character. And first thing I just want to say is this. Your father was a legend. I said that before. He was very well liked. and it's a shame what happened to him. Do you think your father? What would he think of you now that you have cooperated with the government in regards to his death? How do you think he feels about that? If he was, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I've been asked that before. I feel like it's a two-sided coin. The first, I'd say he probably didn't like what I did.
Right.
But the other side, the humanitarian side, maybe he says, "Hey, Willie, thank you for finding me."
Right.
But I don't think that he would have been okay. Let's put it this way: if he was alive and I went to jail, I take my lumps. There is no cooperation. So I know how he felt about rats. So I can't look at you guys with a straight face and say that he's okay with that. So
right, well, that's an honest answer. How does in regards to your family feeling about what you did as far as cooperating? What is your relationship with your sisters, if any?
Well, my eldest sister, we have no relationship whatsoever.
I didn't want to name their names, Billy. I just,
It's okay. It's okay. I won't name them either. Just out of respect for them. My eldest sister, we have no contact at all. My middle sister, who I love dearly, has a beautiful heart. We don't speak as of right now, but it's not due to my cooperation. And then I have another sister that my dad had with someone else. And we talk on social media. So they were upset that I couldn't tell them what I was doing. That upset them, because they, especially my mom felt that she needed more time to get things in order for herself, and her kids. So that was the part that hurt them. They were like, "You did this for 18 months." But, just so you guys know, I would say things to them like, "I'm not letting daddy's murder go unanswered. I am working on something." Now, how they took it, I did have an aunt, my father's sister, that for all intent and purposes, if she could have been a gangster, she would have been. She
Absolutely.
was ruthless. Yeah, she was ruthless. And she wanted me to go out and kill people, whereas my mother kept begging me to not to do anything, to stay away, and I just kept telling her, I'm like, I can't. And my mom, she wasn't well, after my dad, especially right after. So yeah, it put a huge strain on our relationship as a family. But my eldest sister, if I could tell you anything, my father hated her husband. There was one night at the club, and no one knows this, but I'm going to share it with you, Danny.
Okay.
Some money went missing that my brother-in-law was tasked just to hold, and it disappeared out of his home. And he came up with this whole bullshit story that someone broke into the house and they went up into the attic and they found the money in the middle of the day, 50 feet up. No one saw anything. They bypassed the Rolexes, they bypassed the diamonds, but they just took the money. So my father sent for him one night, brought him up to the club, and my dad, this verbatim, gentlemen, on my soul. My dad says, "Come outside for a minute." He says, "Look," he goes, "I want to talk to your brother-in-law, but I just need you to stand there. You don't have to say nothing. just standing there. And I was a lot bigger then, guys. So my dad had let him know in so many words that I ain't buying your story. And this is verbatim. The only reason why my son is not ripping your fucking arms off right now and beating you over the head with them is because you're the father of my grandchildren. And that is the only reason. Now you're going to get the fuck out of this club. You ain't coming back here. You're going to go to work. You're going to go home. You're going to go back to work, go back home, and that's going to be the rest of your life. And he didn't want to be bothered with him. And when my dad went away, you know, me and this other gentleman had to run the crew. And my sister had, forgive me here, she had a hard on for me because of that. Now, that had nothing to do with me. The only conversation my father and I had about this missing money was we were on a plane flying to Boston, going to a wedding. Matter of fact, Whitey was there. That was the first time I met Whitey. And my dad had said to me, I was sitting there reading the sports section, and he just tapped me with his elbow. He's like, "Hey," I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "How come you don't talk about what happened with your brother-in-law?" I'm like, "What do you want me to say?" And he said to me, he goes, "Do you buy the story?" I'm like, "No, not at all." I'm like, "But the part that perplexes me is that I know he's deathly afraid of you. So the part that I don't get, I'm like, Pop, I'm like, he had to owe out money. He had to owe out money to some people and was afraid to come and tell you. And he must have felt that that was his best way out." So
Right.
that's the story as far as my sisters go. But that's just my eldest sister. Look, if they ever reached out to me, at least my eldest sister, I don't feel that I can accept her apology. Quickly, when my mother was sick, my mother had passed away. And my mother lives 10 minutes from here, Danny. 10 minutes.
Right.
And she passed away. And I got a phone call from my friend Andrew. And he said to me, "Brother, you sitting down?" I said, "Am I sitting down?" "No, why?" I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Well, I don't know how to say this to you." I'm like, "Look, what? Am I getting pinched?" Like, just spit it out, man.
Right.
He's like, no, it's nothing like that. He's like, I heard something that your mother passed away. I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "That can't be." And I threw the phone down. I jetted over there. And the plan was to not even tell me that she passed away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now that takes a special kind of fucking person to do something like that.
Well,
So,
she was definitely a Cthulhu from the other side, because she was, if you know what I'm saying,
no doubt.
but it's sad that transpire the way they do.
Yeah.
But getting back to stolen money, was there any truth about, I don't know, $1 million behind a stove in a house? Is that even relevant? If you want to speak about it, you can. If not, it's fine too.
No,
But you know what I'm
it's
talking about, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was 1.5, and I knew it was there. It was
Right.
in the vent over the stove. And
Right.
the only reason why I knew it was there was because I think my mother was cooking one day, and I smoke or whatever, and she went to go throw the vent on, and she hit one of the buttons, and my father kind of snapped out a little bit. So yeah, that money was there. I was always told from my father that if anything ever happened to him, give them nothing, meaning I guess the street, and you make sure that your mother gets what she has to get. Yeah. So that is true, Danny. Yes.
Billy, I'm going to ask you this question, and you don't have to answer it. If you do, you do.
Mhm.
Do you think your only avenue become an informant? Was there another avenue that you considered, truthfully, as far as retaliation? And what is your opinion on Jackie DeRoss? I look at this thing a little different, and I'm not better than you, and I'm a human being just like you are.
Yes.
And I think he would be the one that I would kill. But that's my opinion. But what is your answer, Billy, to that?
Look, I hold my honesty in the highest regard, regardless of how difficult it is.
Right.
Jackie, I wanted to kill him for sure. That night, I knew the window was tight, Danny. It was tight. And I saw everybody's demeanor that night. So everybody that I thought was my brother,
right,
I didn't feel that night, and I felt that there was a certain swagger about Jackie. Jackie always had a swagger about him.
Right.
But that particular night, I felt like it was a very confident swagger, So at that point in time, I knew that if something did happen, I knew that it had to come from our own backyard. So I'm sorry, Lee, one sec. So Jackie, I felt, may had to be an integral part in something at that moment, Matter of fact, I'll be perfectly honest with you, and you could probably fact check this. The following morning, the brother-in-law I just told you about, I told him, I'm like, look, you have to drive me somewhere. And he's like, okay. So I went and I grabbed a couple of pistols out of the safe, and I made him drive me up to Bay Street in Staten Island. Jackie used to have a little fruit stand over there. And I told my brother-in-law, look, if you hear pops, I'm like, just take the fuck off, okay? Other than that, just keep the car running, keep it in drive. So I spot him. He's standing outside, chewing on a cigar, and I had a leather jacket on, and I ran across the street. And this is my hand to God, gentlemen, on my children. I jetted across the street, and I was chest to chest with him. Now, Jackie's kind of short. So, yeah. So I know that I can manhandle him, but my intentions were very bad in the moment. I was going to kill him. And when I got across the street and I realized how easy it was going to be, like, I'm not talking about the aftermath. I'm just talking about in that moment. I could have left him in the gutter. And I stopped. When I realized how easy this was going to be, my dad used to have a saying, Willie, any monkey could pull a trigger, and I kind of heard him in the back of my mind saying, if you do this right now like this, then you didn't learn anything from me, and I stopped. But I did tell him, this is pretty much verbatim, 3 heads are going to go for my father. Now, the number 3 just came out of my mouth. Like, I didn't know if there were 3 people involved, 10 people, I didn't know. But I did say 3. And I did have other people on my mind, and Allie might have been one of them at that time, So to think if there was another route to go other than doing what I did, yeah, I guess I could have packed up my shit and just left, Yeah, that's Allie.
Yeah.
Good looking guy, Allie. He really was.
I got to ask you one quick question. We have some people here that don't know the names that we're naming. Explain who Jackie DeRosa was.
DeRoss. DeRoss, Jackie DeRoss.
Okay.
Jackie was my dad's childhood friend. I mean, they came up together doing hijacking and stuff like that. My dad was always the tougher out of the two of them. But Jackie was no slouch as far as if he needed to pull a trigger, you know. Um, yeah, so they were childhood friends. And that was something that really ate me because I always felt in my heart like, you know, we call each other gumbadas, you know, and my dad would always refer to Jackie as his gumbada. And to think in that moment that, you know, you sold out your best friend, you know, again, allegedly, um, it it really hurt me. It really hurt me for sure. Um, and I'm like, if you could do that to your best, look, it's that life. I mean, think about how many guys got killed, and it's always one of your best friends, you know. They knock on your
Yeah.
door, you let them in, and the rest is history, as they say. You
And
know?
what would make you think that? What was the signs that he was involved?
Well, that night, the way he was acting, um, I kind of felt uh, he was kind of acting as if like he knew that my dad wasn't going to show up. You know, um, one of the things was is that he sat down at the table to sit down to eat, and he was telling the kids to drop the pasta, quote unquote. Um, and he sat
That's
down.
Panarella. That's not DeRoss.
Okay.
Wait,
That's
put that
Charlie
back.
Moose.
Oh, Charlie Moose. Oh, I could tell you stories about Moose.
Yeah.
Crazy guy. Um, but so yeah, that night, him sitting down before my dad walked in, which for me, it felt like it was a telltale sign, maybe that maybe he knew something that the rest of us might not have known at that moment. Um, but then it came out years and years later that more than one person knew, from what I understand, that guys were being polled. You know,
Yeah.
a captain came to me and said uh, they called me in and they had asked me, "How would you feel if Wild Bill wasn't around anymore?"
Was this Jackie right here?
That's
Yeah, that's
Jackie.
him.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Jackie. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry about that. I'm pulling these off Pinterest, and they have the Pinterest, and they have the wrong names on some of these pictures.
Yeah, that happens a lot, especially with Ali. His I believe it's his uncle. A lot of
Right.
people, yeah, they see that shit a lot. And
Misconfused.
yeah, yeah.
What was your opinion of Jackie when he came to your house and told your family? Well, he was essentially looking there for your father's money, and he told your family not to talk to the police, don't do anything, I'll be back. And
Yeah.
that was kind of, he already knew, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of
So,
course. And in that moment, don't forget, now I have to play Jackie's hand, you know.
right,
Um,
right.
but the thing about Jackie, when he came to the house and was knocking on the floors and the walls and, you
Yeah,
know, looking for spots, um, Jackie, I felt he would always say, the kid said this and the kid said that, you know, speaking about Alley Boy. Um, and I felt like he kept doing that over and over and over again. You know, now you weren't scaring me, but, you know, my sisters, my mom, you know, and my mom was angry, you know, about it. Um, but when he came over looking for the money, you know, inside, I'm like, bro, you can keep fucking looking. You ain't getting a fucking nickel, bro. I could tell you, there was one night he came by unannounced. I was by my mother's house, and this is the night I thought I was getting clipped. Um, he had said to me, there was a bag up in my mother's attic, and my dad used to have envelopes in there for guys that were in jail, stuff like that, money he was collecting that he would send over to the families and stuff. Um, And I remember going up into the attic with my mother, and my mother was throwing everything into the bag to give to Jackie. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I have strict orders that if anything ever happened to Dad, that, you ain't giving nothing over. And so as she's throwing them in, I'm taking them out. She's throwing them in, I'm taking them out. So I says, don't worry about it, I'll handle it. So I go downstairs. It was in a sewing machine bag. It was kind of like about this big. I don't know if you could see it, but it was big enough. And so we go downstairs, and Jackie tells me, he's like, Buff. He used to call me Buff. He's like, Buff, listen, do me a favor, follow me to my house, with the bag. And my mother had turned around and says, yeah, go ahead. My mother used to call me Billy Boy. Billy Boy, go ahead, take a ride with Jackie. And I remember looking at her like, what are you fucking trying to get me killed here? So in the back of my mind, I'm saying to myself, if it's me or him at this point, he's done. So we drive to his house, and he's taking side streets to make sure no one was following us. And we get to his house, and all the lights are out on the outside. And he's like, Buff, I'm going to go inside. He goes, I'm going to go into the yard. He's like, as soon as I get into the yard, toss the bag over. So I did that, and there's a little bit of a sigh of relief. Now, I had a pistol on me anyway. So I tossed the bag over, and all of a sudden I hear, hey, Buff, this bag feels kind of light. I'm like, hey, I don't know. Hey, Jackie, have a good night. I'll see you. And I remember, walking pretty quickly back to my car that night. And let's put it this way. He was pretty fucking pissed after that, and that at that moment, it was kind of like a feel good chuckle for me, like I kind of felt like my dad might have been
Right.
oh, you got him. Yeah.
Another question, Billy.
Yes.
I wasn't going to talk about this, but and if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine.
Yeah.
There was a lot of talk on the street when your dad was away. I don't know if you were addicted to drugs or alcohol or whatever, but there was chatter on the streets that you were taking your dad's money. He would send you, or you would get instructions to go here or there. You'd pick up money, and he never saw it. And then there was guys on the street that saying that you were addicted to coke or whatever. And how do you feel about that? Was that a true story, or what was that?
Again, like I always say to you, for me, honesty is paramount. Drugs, absolutely not.
Okay.
Coke, I think I touched it once in my life. Once. I didn't like it. I didn't like the way it made me feel.
Right.
So as far as being an alcoholic or anything like that, no. But when he was away, I did have specific instructions from him to lay low.
Okay.
He felt that the government would try to pinch me and then dangle me in front of him to
Right.
see if he would cooperate. So guys would pay weekly their Shylock money, and everything was accounted for because I used to have a slip for him, and I'd go see him sometimes 3-4 times a week with my mother, and then with my stepsister. So all the accounting was spot on. But what I was doing is that he didn't want me doing anything illegal. So I would gamble. I felt like, hey,
Right.
I had bookmaking rooms, I felt like I knew sports. So I was gambling, especially with other families, So I think the tally when he came home and we were going over the numbers, I think he said the number was around 100 to 150,000 that he felt I was responsible for.
Sure.
And I told him the truth. I told him exactly what I was doing.
Right.
So no, as far as the drugs, that's absolutely not, brother. So if anybody says stuff like that, that's just people talking out of their ass.
Well, that's why I asked you. Yeah.
No, but I did gamble a lot of money away. And then, you know, it kind of opened up a window for a lot of guys to say, well, I squared up with Junior. And a lot of guys were just fucking bullshitting because they didn't square up. You know, there were times, for instance, one guy, and this person who I grew up around, a younger guy, got straightened out. I think he was shy, I think $5 or $10 on a weekly payment. And the guy was paying thousands every week. And he was shy $5 one time. And I would have to go, like I said, go see my old man, and he would go over the numbers. I write it down in little crib sheets and then stick it into my gum. And, you know, he would sit down, make believe he was eating potato chips or whatever, and he'd be looking at it. And everything was on the money. And he would say to me, well, how come so-and-so was short $5? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, and he got really lit over $5. He's like, and you didn't slap him? Now, the kid was straightened out, you know? So I didn't feel like over $5 that the guy should have got cracked over it. But the way my old man laid it out to me is that, hey, this week it's $5. Next week it'll probably be 10. And before you know it, it's going to be 100 here, 100 there. And he's like, you can't allow that. You can't allow it. So,
sure.
All the accounting, he was fucking mad, man. When he realized how much money I gambled away, bro.
He wanted to clip you.
Yeah, bro, I swear to you, I grabbed whatever cash that I had. I my hand to God, I grabbed my pistol, and he chased me down the hallway, down the stairs. I remember running through the yard, around the pool. I scaled the wall, and I called up. She was my girl. She's my wife now. But at the time, I'm like, hey, look, I'm gonna have to. I have to leave for a while. And she's like, what do you mean leave? I'm like, I'm laying there for a little bit. She's like, what does that mean? I'm like, I'm just gonna go away. I don't know how long I'm gonna be gone. So she's like, no, wherever you go, I'm coming with you. And mind you, it was the best vacation I ever had. It was around the holidays. I remember New Year's Eve had passed, and I was in Antigua. And I remember calling my mother just before the bells, telling her Happy New Year, whatnot. And she's like, do you want to talk to your father? And I'm like, if he wants to talk to me, yeah. So we got on the phone, and all I hear is, what's doing? And I'm like, hey, I just wanted to wish you a Happy New Year. He's like, Happy New Year to you too. He's like, but
when you coming home?
He's like, yeah. He's like, look, if you ain't home, I think by the end of the week, he said, I'm changing the locks. And then you and I are going to have a whole different conversation.
Right.
And I remember, and I told him on the phone going, I don't know if you're going to see me before the end of the week. I says, but as soon as I come home, I said, I will come correct. I promise you. And he accepted that. When I arrived home, I walked in. He was sitting down eating Chinese food with my mother and a friend of his and their wife. And when I walked in, I went over to kiss him hello. And I just said to him, I said, hey, can I talk to you? And he looks down at his soup, and he's like, I'm eating. I'm like, no, I mean, after you're done. So he says, go wait for me downstairs, and, you know, we'll talk after that. And we did. And we did. And I got shelved. I got shelved.
Did you get shelved?
Well,
I'm sorry. Did you get shelved for good at that point?
Nah, it wasn't. Well, it felt like it was going to be for good, you know. Nah, I think it lasted maybe 2 months, maybe 3.
Okay.
But I remember my mother kept politicking for me, saying, Billy, come on, like, look at him. He's like a puppy dog. You know, he misses hanging out with you. Like, how long are you going to punish the kid for? You know, he just wants to be around you. He wants to be with you. And One day, it was a Saturday, I believe, and he was leaving to go up to the club, and I just happened to be sitting on the stoop, and he's like, "What are you doing today?" I'm like, "Nothing." He's like, "Nah, if you're not doing nothing," he's like, "why don't you come up to the club?" And then we had, look, we had a great relationship after that. Like there was no holds barred at all after that. And yeah, I miss him, man, for sure.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
What kind of organizations was your father involved in as far as giving back to the community and you as well?
The one that he was on the board was the National Leukemia Association.
Right.
He belonged to Angel Guardians for the Elderly. And there was another one, Battered Women and Children. And for all
Right.
three, heart and soul into it, just heart and soul. And it made me feel really good to see him in that light. The man would
Sure.
marvel me, guys. Like he would marvel me because I would go to union negotiations with him, hear him speak one way. Um, and then obviously being in the street with him. And then speak to doctors and people afflicted. I was just marveled at the stuff
Sure.
that he was able to retain and accomplish, and with fortitude, always wanting to do more. You know, um, there are a lot of guys that will get involved with charities because they want to kind of deflect. But for my dad, it wasn't about deflection. I could assure you that. Yeah, he hated that fucking picture, man.
Oh, did
He
he?
fucking yeah, he hated it.
Yeah, that was a mugshot, I think.
That's
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
If
that's
I'm
probably
not,
the most popular
yeah,
picture of Wild Bill.
yeah, and he hated
yeah.
that fucking picture, man. Every time he saw it, he fucking hated it.
Well, I'd like
Well,
to ask.
you guys don't have no pictures of him with a fucking mustache, man.
No, I don't.
I do.
Oh, you
I
do?
do.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you something, Billy. People are
go
going to
ahead.
look at this and say, no matter what, they're going to say you're a rat, and they're not going to be satisfied and stuff. What would you like to say to those people?
Hey, look, whatever my impression to you, I don't mean, Danny and yourself, um, whatever makes you feel better about yourself or around your friends, look, there's an old saying, and you guys heard this a million times. Never judge a man unless you walked a mile in his shoes. Now, I'm not excusing what I did. I'm not saying what I did was right. Um, and I don't get pissed off or angry at people. I mean, look, I hate the word rat. I just always hated it, but it is what it is. I mean, I can't change it. You know, I made that choice many, many years ago. And if you got to wear it, you got to wear it. But, a lot of people think I couldn't speak about myself. And just so you guys know, and Danny, I said this to you one day on the phone. Look, all cooperators aren't the same. Now, I have my issues with a lot of cooperators. I can tell you that I probably, bless you, I could probably tell you that I don't like a lot of them because for them it was about self-preservation. They couldn't handle jail. And I don't always agree with that. But if you say that you wanted to change your life, you know, um, and you got caught in a case, well, look, everybody has their reasons. Everybody's going to give you their excuse of why they did what they did. For me, it's not an excuse. I did what I did. If I could say anything to anyone that watches this, and I've said this before, that I can't change your view of me, you know, but the nuts and bolts of me are still inside. the way I was raised and how to handle myself. And I was good with my hands, Danny. I really was.
How long were you inside, Bill?
In jail?
Altogether, yes.
Oh man, days, maybe a week or so. But I never had time like Danny had in, or anybody else for that matter.
Do you feel like you cooperated because you didn't want to do that time?
No. I listen. When I cooperated, brother, it was voluntary. I literally volunteered to cooperate because I wanted to find my father. So no, I was not facing jail time. I wasn't under indictment. I mean, I don't know what people think, but you could fact check that too if you need to. But no, I was not in any trouble. There was a situation with a stockbroker, and Danny knows this. The stockbroker was a friend of mine at the time. And to make a long story short, he wound up doing something with a margin. I don't know if you guys understand what margin is. All it is credit.
I do.
When it comes
Credit,
to stocks
yeah.
and bonds. Yeah. Well, this kid took it upon himself to open up a margin account and sign my name to it because I had given him some stocks and they did really well. And when I say well, I mean, I think our investment was maybe 22,000. And mind you, the money that we invested was my wife's grandmother's money. It was a slip and fall accident that she had. And she just lost her husband, my wife's grandfather. So we were looking to try to make her money so that she wouldn't have to worry about bills and stuff like that. So I had given the check over to the stockbroker. We turned that 22,000 into like $1.50 in a matter of 3-4 weeks. But he had specific instructions. Do not sell until I tell you to, and do not buy until I tell you to. So when he saw that, the answer that I got from this broker was Junior, I saw the amount of money that we were able to make in such a short period of time. And he said to me, and this is verbatim, he's like, I wanted to buy you a house. And I'm like, look, you got to pay this money back, you know? He's like, well, I don't have it. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. You got wedding money, you just got married, go into the envelopes, you pay back the original amount. I wasn't taxing the kid, nothing. So he paid a little bit, 5,000. And then by the third time around, he wasn't paying. So,
What, they hit you with an extortion beef on that?
Yeah. Because I literally went to the stockbroker firm. Mind you, was right on the West Side Highway. And Danny, just so you know, and Lee too, forgive me here, but I literally went with my wife and I took my firstborn with us. Okay. Now, do you really think I'm going to go out of my way to take my wife and child with me and then threaten to throw a broker out the window? No.
Right.
And I took them with me for a reason, because I didn't want it to get misconstrued that I was there violently. Now, I did tell his boss that, you know, he might not show up to work. And they took that and they ran with it. I didn't say I'm with the Colombo family. I didn't say, do you know who I'm with? My dad used to tell me, as soon as a guy turns around and tells you, hey, do you know who I'm with? Crack him before he even finish it. Yeah. My dad used to say, you could always send flowers in the morning. That was his MO.
That's a fact.
So
that was a fact.
That never happened. So that was just a bunch of bullshit, brother.
And there's another thing, well, I like to ask you about is, and we kind of brought this up at the very beginning of this, and maybe we'll kind of end with it. How did you, it was said that your father at times did not treat his crew good. And when I said that, I didn't really see you say, yes, he did. So what is your opinion on that? An honest opinion.
Well, let me interject real quick. And I think the initial interview that we did on Billy, I think what I really meant by that is Wild Bill liked things done a certain way.
Yeah.
And if you didn't do it that way, he was, you know, he would break you apart. So
Yeah.
that's what I meant, that he didn't treat his crew correctly. Maybe I didn't, you know, express it the way I should have. But go ahead, Billy. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah, no. You know what? Listen, guys, Danny especially, he was tough on our crew, man. Especially with we had like a little close circle. Danny, I'm sure you know who the players were.
Yeah.
Now, I felt that he was a little bit too rough on them, you know, especially when it came to money. But like I mentioned to you earlier, if he felt that you owed that money and you were supposed to pay it on a certain day at a certain time and you didn't, he didn't have much patience for it. And my dad wasn't shy about lighting you up, even if there were other people around. So there were times that I felt very uncomfortable when he would do that to certain guys. So yeah, he was tough on his crew for sure, and there's no mistake about that. You know, eventually, if you guys have other guests on your show, maybe they will attest to what I'm trying to say. But Danny's got his ear to the ground, so he knows.
And when you say tough, he was tough on them. After he got killed, did they still want revenge, even though that he was tough on them?
No, because I didn't get the response that I thought I was going to get, especially from the guys that my dad brought up and brought into that life. You know, I mean, I know. I mean, I only know how I am. If that was my guy and you guys just took out my guy, um, I'm putting a squad together, you know, right away. Um, but no, nobody stepped up. The only thing I do know is that, and this is another thing that hurt me, guys. Usually in the life, especially with the way my dad went out, if you have a son that's in the street, whatever he had should go to the son. Now, I'm not
Becomes you.
saying
Right.
yes. So what happened was is that they froze everything and they kept it from me. And they started telling guys, because I was being sent for. And I kept telling everybody, you ain't walking me down no basement, for sure. So everything was already frozen. And guys were told, if we find out you're doing anything with Junior before he comes in, it was going to be their asses. So I guess in a way I can understand why certain guys, you know, held back a little bit. But nobody had turned around and said, Junior, let me know what you want to do. There was one gentleman, one captain, who I still love to this day. We haven't spoken in a long time, but where we sat down and he said, look, we got certain guys that a lot of people don't know who they are. They don't know their faces, that were ready to put work in. Yeah, I love that picture, man. Love that picture. Um, but and we were going to start putting together like a little bit of a squad. But this gentleman didn't want to do it right away. He felt that we needed to let some time pass. And this guy kept telling me, Junior, you can't let them know what you're thinking. You can't show that to them because it'll be the end of you. It's going to be the end of me. There was one guy, and he came to the memorial service that my mother had because we didn't have a body, obviously. And this gentleman I met maybe once or twice prior to my dad's death. and they called this guy the Ghost. And it's not a gentleman from Staten Island that you might think of, Danny. This guy was not. He wasn't in the street every day. But I remember my dad telling me, and this guy had the bluest of the bluest eyes that you've ever seen, like an angel. And my dad told me when I first met this guy, Willie, if this guy's eyes you see in the street, those are the last eyes you're going to see. And he came to the memorial for my dad, and he sat with me, this guy. And he's like, look, I know what's going through your mind, Junior. I could see it in your face. I see it in your eyes. He's like, whatever you're thinking right now, it's not the time. You need to let some time go by. Try to settle yourself, gather yourself, and then think about the guys that you think that you can trust. Because it's going to be like going down the rabbit hole, you know? Yeah. That's Stanley Meyer in front of him, lawyer.
Yeah.
Lawyer.
Yeah.
But anyway, and he was the one guy that made me feel that he really loved my father. And this guy was lethal, man. I remember my dad telling me that he had over 100 bodies.
Wow.
So I think he's probably passed away by now. That's the only reason why I mention it. So.
And now, Danny, would you, to close out this interview, Bill, I appreciate you. You spent quite a bit of time. We're over the hour mark, and thank you so much. And Danny, if you'd like to finish this out and ask Bill a closing question, go for it.
Yeah, Billy, I really appreciate you coming on, and I really appreciate you giving us an insight on your dad and you know, somewhat of your life, because I know a lot of people are interested in that. And you know, it's better coming from the horse's mouth than reading something that, you know, can be misconstrued. You know, I'm really appreciative that you came on.
Look, Danny, coming from you, and I know your stance. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
And Lee, you're doing a great fucking job, brother. You're doing a great job. Just keep it up.
I appreciate that. And my goal in this interview was to bring your father back to life. And I believe that you gave us the opportunity to do that because everybody really wants to know who Billy Cutolo Jr. is and who his father is.
Yeah.
And this pretty much says it. And I personally, I have no opinion about you ratting. You made your decision and you got to live with it. And Danny and I will say this many times. Our opinions on it are different. But with that, I'd just like to say thank you. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And we're going to drop this down. I'm going to make some phone calls before I drop it. And then I'm going to drop it down. And I got a feeling that a lot of people are going to watch this.
Let me ask you a question, Billy.
Yes.
Do you remember my friend? Do you remember my friend Bobby Bibbs?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
All right. I was around. Anyway, he was a great guy, and Jimmy Gooch, you know, and Nicky Rizzo.
Jimmy Gooch.
That I was around.
Nicky. Oh, you told me about Nicky.
Yeah. And but Bobby Bibbs, he was a pisser. We had so much fun. He had a jewelry store on Bay Parkway and 86th Street.
Yep, I remember.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's why I said,
anyway,
you know, you got good people. You know, Danny's got good people that he knows, man.
And when you guys talk about this stuff, do you always kind of yearn for the past?
It never goes away for me. You know, this is why I
It doesn't.
It's hard,
listen.
You know, when
Go ahead, Danny. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to cut you off, Billy. It's when you live and act and do certain things in your life that are habit forming, money, easy money, that ambiance of around tough guys, and you know, you're not afraid of nothing, and then you become something different. you yearn for that. At least I do, and I still do. And I could tell you a story of being on Bayview Drive in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Doris's house, who's a Persico, and I'm not going to go any further, but I think Billy knows what I'm talking about. Sitting in that house, looking on the intercoastal, and just sitting there and saying, "Maron." Well, who would believe this? Nobody. You know. And anyway, to me, that's what I miss, and I'm not ashamed to say it. You know.
No, you know what? I'll echo that because there was a time where things were different. You know, not everybody was on a cell phone. Not everybody was texting. There was no fucking cameras with the phones. You know, so I'm happy in a way that I was able to come out the other side. You know, I don't know, being an older gentleman, trying to bring in new blood and being able to trust. Like, I don't know, like for me, I would just say that life for me, it would be a has-been life. But I do miss the camaraderie at the time. I do miss the parties of us all hanging out together, you know, drinking, laughing, dancing, whatever the fuck it was, you know. And then the charity work was, you know, so elating for me. So I do miss a lot, but I have two more beautiful children after my firstborn, that had I still been in the street, probably wouldn't be here today, because I do know that there would have been two outcomes. And the first one, I'd probably be dead. And that's the way I saw it going. Or I'd probably be doing life. And I didn't want to flush my wife and my firstborn down the toilet because I wanted blood. So, but yeah, I do miss it, Lee. Yeah, there are some times that you miss it. Yeah, for sure.
And that's what Danny says too. If it wasn't for his child, he would have stayed in the life and probably would have ended in that life. You know. And
yeah, and we you know what? Listen, you know, before we close out, a lot of guys like to talk just to hear themselves talk. Danny, you know what I'm talking about. But for what? To be a story, you know, being told in a bar to say that, hey, Junior went out like a man, you know, he got the guys who killed his father. And, you know, I don't want to be a punchline or the end of a story for someone just to be chit-chatting in a bar, you know? So, you know, let those guys say what they need to say. But, you know, for Danny to even take this interview, and this was probably the deciding factor of why I came on, is because I know Danny's pedigree, and I know what Danny's about, and he don't hide it, which for me, that says a lot. And Lee, I know that you guys have that perfect yin and yang of a great show. So that's why.
And one last
Billy,
question.
you remember the home stretch? Remember the home stretch back in the
Oh
day?
shit, man! Oh
Anyway,
my
go ahead, Lee.
God!
I'm sorry. Remember?
Just one quick, this is kind of a fun question I want to ask you before we leave. So what would your father think about you right now if he's seen you sitting there dressed in that green like that?
First of all, my dad, he hated green. He felt, I swear, no, he felt like it was bad luck. I didn't get him to wear green probably until he came home from jail, where he started wearing like polos and khakis and stuff like that. You know, I tried to get him to dress down a little. But nah, I don't know. I think, you know, whenever I go to my cigar guy and I buy cigars, it's like, it's as if he's with me a lot of times.
Well, you look really good in that outfit. So
I know. I can't help it, man. What the fuck?
You know, and one thing that that you must take into, at least your dad didn't suffer. You know.
Yeah.
They took him out right away.
That's one consolation. Yeah,
and it
for
could have
sure.
been worse.
For sure.
Thank you so much, Bill, for being here. I appreciate it. And
No thanks necessary, man. None
I'm
at all.
looking forward to putting this up. And you take care of yourself. And Danny and I will close out the show. But thank you so much for being here.
Hey, and look,
Billy,
hey,
thank you, pal. I
nah,
appreciate it.
And I'll
you
talk
guys
to you
have my number. If there's anything you guys need, Danny, don't hesitate, brother. For sure.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care, my man.
All right,
Take
guys.
care.
Have a beautiful day.
You too.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, Danny. So what would
What do
you
you
like?
think?
What would you like to say to people that say they're going to say this? They're going to say, some people are going to say, Danny Trio doesn't want to be around rats, but he did an interview with Bill Cutolo. What would your message be to them?
Well, listen, my stance or my opinion or anything hasn't changed. Bill Cutolo knows my feeling, and I'm not going to get him on the show and bash him in front of people or even you. You and I talked about it, so people could say what the fuck they want to say. It doesn't bother me, and it shouldn't. Billy knows how I feel, and it is what it is.
Yep. And that's why I appreciate you. I kind of had to talk you into doing this, and I appreciate you
You
doing
did. You did.
it because you
But
asked.
and again, and I don't mean to cut you off, and it goes to the show, to the program. If all you want to do is keep yelling at rats like I do, and you don't bring anybody on and have a civil conversation with them that people want to hear, then I'm just a big mouth, So
Yep.
I guess you got to give and take,
Let me ask you a question. Before you did this show with me, did you ever think you'd be on here with Bill Cutolo Jr. doing this before we met?
Absolutely not. And absolutely not. And Bill knows a lot of people that I know and knew. So, in a weird way, it's good to hear names that I haven't heard for many years. And, it is what it is. Bill did what he did, and he lives with that. I never did that, and I would never do that. And that's just my opinion. People can say what they want about me. That's perfectly fine. I have no problems with that.
The biggest thing I'm getting out of this interview, I'll be totally honest with you, is I wanted to be about Bill Cutolo Jr. without a doubt, but to be about the father and to hear from someone that actually knew him. It was his son. And to hear the details about him and exactly how everything happened. I hope I asked the questions that you guys like. And we'll be doing more interviews like this. Every time we put someone on like this, we get a call somebody else wants to interview. So, with that, Danny, I'd like to say thank you. I'm going to close out the show. And let me just end this broadcast and I'll talk to you. Okay, 1 second. Thank you, people. Please sub. Please sub the channel. We're moving up fast in the subs. I believe this deserves a sub if you haven't subbed, because there's going to be much more like this to come. Thank you all, people.